Oh, now it's time for battle. Ha! This is too green. What could be in a forest that is not green? I know. I need some water. I need to make a, what's it called? A fluid. No, shit. I know. Modular river tiles. Hey, my name is Leif. Welcome to my YouTube channel called Devs and Dice. Today I'm going to show you how I did some river tiles that are durable, modular, 0.5mm thick, and still look nice. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm going to be using some 0.5mm thick plasticard. Now this is the first time I'm using this material, so I was a little bit weary of exactly how it would work. But as you can see, I'm using a template that is 4 inches wide. This is just to define the mouth of each river tile. I'm sketching in the rough shape with a pencil, and then shortly thereafter I just cut it out using my alpha knife. Again, I wasn't sure exactly how plasticard would work, but in all honesty I think I made a mountain out of a molehill. It's simply very thin plastic. You can cut this with a scissors or with a knife. All in all, I cut for my table 4 pieces. Now each piece would be 30 centimeters long, and since my table is 60 centimeters in diameter, well, I didn't need more than 4, at least in my head. But you could easily, cut more pieces if you need to for your wargaming table. Here I'm just making sure that all of the ends are flush and sort of meet up nicely. Now, at this point I want to start defining the area where I'm gonna sort of add a river bank. Here I'm just finger gauging and just drawing out with a pencil, approximately where I want them to meet. Now, the important thing here is at the ends, this should be exactly the same across different tiles. But in the center of these tiles, you can of course go as wide as you want. Now, of course, my first pencil markings there were on the wrong side. Or at least that's what I thought. So I just quickly used a Sharpie and sort of sketched it out on the glossy side. Now for the banks, I'm going to be using gravel and fine sand. This is essentially just some construction sand that I sifted into 2 sort of grains. Now for this, I'm going to be using my Gorilla Glue, super glue. The reason why I'm doing this is because it actually has a brush which enables me to do really sort of fine application of this at the ends where I want the tiles to meet. Now I'm going to start with adding some fine sand, and then afterwards I'm adding a little bit of super glue and then just sort of spreading some of these larger rocks on. And I want you to have a little bit of perspective here. These larger rocks are quite small, but still they are a lot larger than the fine sand. And you can see I'm doing this segment by segment. I'm going in first with the Gorilla Glue, getting the base of the fine sand, and then adding some additional super glue and adding some of those rocks. One tip when you're doing this, please sit in a well ventilated area, because I'll be honest, I did start to feel a little bit lightheaded after a while, because I'm super gluing like all of these banks, and each one of these tiles is about 30 centimeters long times 2. So yeah, let's just say I think I was at one point sort of just smiling and doing this. I'm not sure exactly why, but the result turned out pretty good. Thankfully, I went out and I got some air because it was time to prime these, and as you can see, I made this super advanced MacGyver construction using some what do you call that? Binders and basically a wooden dowel. So here I'm just spraying everything with Army Painter's black primer. I'm spraying both the sort of the front side and the back side just because it looks better. and that turned out pretty nice. So let's start with some painting. I'm gonna go in with some desert yellow. I'm diluting this paint quite heavily in the beginning, and this is just so it can seep into all of those, you know, small cracks and crevices that the stones and the texture has created. Now, yeah, I primed this black, which of course means that I think in the end I had to go over everything 3 times. And you'll see here also that I'm doing a slightly overbrush, and I'm doing that purposely because I know I'm going to come in with several colors towards the center of the river. For some dry brushing on the stones, I'm coming in with some khaki, and I'm pretty much trying to focus this on where I have the fine sand and the small sort of rocks or gravel. And I'm really trying to be quite aggressive here, because I want these to have a little bit, you know, stand out a little bit at least. Here I'm using some Vallejo's blue-gray, doing a dry brush on the actual sort of larger stones or the gravel bit, just to sort of separate them ever so slightly from the sand. And it will look something like this once this stage is finished. Now, for the water, I started out with some gorgon hide. This I just apply quite thickly using a brush. And really what I'm after here is just trying to define the center court, so to speak, of the river. I'm not going up on the actual banks. At this point, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to use an airbrush or not, but I opted to use an airbrush. And my honest opinion was that I was going to just use it to for the edges of the water. Here I'm just trying to sort of make a nice fade, and here I'm deliberately trying to go up a little bit on the sand, just to sort of try to create some nice depth, you know, like usually water looks like. And I think already at this point you're starting to see a little bit of the effect that I'm going for. And it doesn't really matter that the center of the tiles isn't covered, because I'm going to be coming in with some Griffin blue, which is a slightly more darker and saturated blue color. Now I'm essentially caring about, well, pretty much the center of each river, and I'm still going to leave some of that, you know, brighter blue at the edges, just to sort of symbolize or you know, more shallow water. And once that's done, I'm gonna do a final painting with the airbrush, just sort of defining the deepest areas. And for this I went with dark sea blue, one of my favorite colors, to be honest. I'm trying to be a little bit spotty here. It's good if you're not too sort of I guess too linear with the dark spots, because usually a river isn't, you know, evenly deep and shallow everywhere. So a little bit of that just gives it a nice organic feel. Now, my idea for making this look wet was to use gloss Mod Podge, and this was a good idea, definitely. And here I'm just sort of stippling it out with a large flat brush. And again, since these are modular tiles, I can't really, you know, define a specific direction the river is flowing. So it should be able to look, you know, good regardless of what direction the river flows. Either if it's up or down, but as long as it's going, like, I guess, one way or the direct opposite. But I'm covering it pretty much, you know, everything, and I'm going up to the bank, so I'm actually going above sort of the sand and all of that. And this is what it looks like once you've covered all of it. And like you can see, I'm going up to the very top of the gravel, essentially. Now, once this has dried, you can see that it's starting to sort of give a nice representation of, you know, the water, and you have, you know, nice texture in it. But I didn't feel like it was enough, so I went in with a second coat of Mod Podge. And actually also, and I'm not sure if I missed it, but I had some spots here and there that obviously didn't have any Mod Podge. So, long story short, I went in with a second coat. And this is going to be repeated a couple of times, unfortunately. But that's the way it looked like. And it was looking okay at this point. But I wasn't still happy with how the edges looked, because I wanted, you know, the edge of the bank to really look like it was, you know, underneath the water. But you can see that it still sort of, it still has that flatness to it. It hasn't gotten much, you know, thicker. Here I'm coming in with some Vallejo water texture. Now, you'll notice here that this one specifically is actually an older sort of tub. And you can almost see it on the actual paste that it looks a little bit drier. And here, actually on these ones, I just opened up a new tub and this one flowed much more easily out of it. But thankfully, both of them, once they, you know, cured, became entirely transparent. And that's what they look like. Now, the reason why I went in with the Vallejo water texture was really to get a little bit more wave definition. Now, I want to create some white water and some rapids, and for this I'm going to be using off-white from Vallejo. Now, I'm going to stipple in this color, and I'm going to stipple in using a set of tweezers and some sponge that I just sort of torn into smaller pieces. Now, if you've seen some of my older videos, you remember that I did this same technique in an old collaboration where we were supposed to do a diorama. Now, doing this just gives the water a little bit more characteristic, and I opted to do this mostly where the dark sea blue was, but I also tried to sort of hit the top of the waves where I felt that it just, you know, added more visual interest to the piece. Now, this is almost done at this point. Now, what you didn't see was that I actually went back in with one more layer of Mod Podge just to sort of lock everything in. Here, I'm just coming in with 2 types of tufts and a little bit of PVA glue, just to sort of define some greenery around the bank. And I think it's time to have a look at the final result. Alright, good folks. My goal going into this was to make river tiles that were as flat as possible, but still looked good. I did only 4 of these tiles, since for my battle mat that meant essentially that I could have 2 full rivers. But what did you think about the end result? Please tell me in the comment section down below. If you like these videos, then please like, subscribe, or share them with any friends that might find them interesting. So with this, I want to wish you an awesome day, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video.